Listen, I did film and television studies at university for 3 years. I spent hours reading countless books and articles on subjects spanning from film all the way to television. Not a single one mentioned Hugh Grant once.
I achieved the hardest qualification across any university or college ever, a 2-1 in history. Let me tell you, the only thing that I learned was that we, as a society, have a history of denying and neglecting Hugh Grant's artistic and cultural relevance, not just in this country, but in the entire world.
I met Oscar at a Hugh Grant-themed event I put on at the Students' Union.
It felt as though Diggory and I were the only ones there, and we agreed that there was a Hugh Grant-shaped hole in academia.
We decided to put it right ourselves. We want to show people that he's an icon in acting.
We want to show people he's more than just a bumbling posh guy.
I'm Diggory Waite.
And I'm Oscar Beardmore Gray. And this is...
Taking Hugh for Granted.
Hello and welcome to Taking Hugh for Granted, the podcast in which two Hugh Grant enthusiasts watch every single film starring Hugh Grant in the attempt to answer the simple question: is this film taking Hugh for granted? Is this film good on its own, or does it rely on the bumbling Brit for its acclaim? I'm Diggory Waite, and I'm joined as ever by my colleague and fellow Hugh Grant obsessive Oscar Beardmore Gray. Oscar, how the bloody hell are you doing today, mate?
I love that facial expression, Diggs. I'm doing well. I'm 26. Turned 26 yesterday.
Yes,
it's
happy
shocking.
Birthday.
It's terrible. Thank you. I mean, the second biggest birthday in the calendar after Hugh Grant's, of course, which we celebrate annually.
Yeah, we certainly do. What did you do to celebrate?
Nothing much. Watched back-to-back Notting Hill, Paddington 2. No, I didn't actually do that. But
Yeah.
Had a good day. But I mean, the bigger news on our podcast, Diggs, is that this week you've been on television, mate.
Oh, come on. I was on TV. If you don't know, people listening at home, I have another podcast. Boo, I'm a traitor. With my mum. And she's the worst co-host. And she is a sex therapist. So much like so much like the TV show Sex Education, I am a scrawny white boy named Otis who can't get laid himself, but instead asks his mum for sex advice to help get his friends laid. And we do that. We have our own podcast called The Real Sex Education. And the other day we were on TV in the UK and in Australia. I don't know if I told you about that as well.
Really?
Yeah. That was interesting. An Australian morning show got in contact with us and was like, oh, can you come on Zoom with us? And they said, oh, it's on our morning show, so it'll be early in the morning for you guys. How does 12:50 a.m. sound? And we thought, fuck, okay. But we thought, what we'll do is we'll go and see James Bond late showing. That's about 3 hours long. It will keep us awake. So we'll go and see James Bond late showing. We are exiting the cinema at like 12 a.m. So we're thinking, brilliant, 50 minutes, we're due to be on air in Australia. And I turn on my phone, because obviously I turn it off during being in the cinema, and I have all these plus 61 calls, i.e. the Australian area code, and they're like, where the hell are you? Hi, it's Deborah here from the morning show. Where the hell are you? And I'm like, we're going to be there. And they're like, oh, okay. So basically, they got the times mixed up, and what they said 12:50 for us. I think they got, because I think they were looking at GMT rather than BST or something. I'm not sure. But anyway, so they were like, you've missed your live slot, but we're going to fit you in a little bit later on. And I was like, okay, fine. But anyway, so yeah, we literally got through the door, went upstairs, opened my laptop, entered their Zoom call, and we were on air. It was mad.
Wow.
It was mental. I didn't even have time to pee, which was insane.
Well, so you literally, the action continued after the James Bond film.
Exactly. Our hearts were pumping. It was mad.
Diggs, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think you're better suited to TV or radio? Have you got the bug now for TV?
I have to say, I really did enjoy the TV appearance. We were in the studio for the thing for Channel 4 and stuff, and I was terrified. Like, I was scared. I did this thing that, I don't know if you notice this on BBC News and stuff. Sometimes they'll be like, talking about an issue, they're like, blah, blah, blah. And we're joined here with Oscar Beardmore Gray. Oscar, I have a question for you. And they ask the question. And obviously, you just answer the question and then the interview starts. But some people disregard the question that's asked and go, well, first of all, I'd like to say, good evening, Diggory. Thank you so much for having me on. To answer your question, they sometimes do that. And it kind of, anyway, for some reason, I did that. I felt the need to do that because I thought that's a polite thing to do, but also it will put me in the driver's seat or make me feel like I'm in control. Anyway,
yeah.
As soon as I did it, I felt disgusting. And I felt, I felt the the interviewer
That is brilliant.
looking at me being like, I know that's insincere. You don't really wish me a good afternoon and thank for coming on. But what was annoying was TV was great. It was really fun. I really enjoyed being on it. But by the time our interview was done, I just settled. Do you know what I mean? And I was just getting into it.
Yeah,
and
you could have been on there for a whole podcast.
Yeah, exactly. The only thing I will say is I don't think I have got the TV bug fully, because I came off air and very stupidly, before we went on, they made us sign all this stuff. One of the things they made us sign, they said, listen, are you okay with, a lot of people watch the show, they might be abusing you on social media. So obviously, yeah, that's one of the things. And they were like, how do you feel about that? And I remember I just wrote in my response, I said, my mum's a therapist, I'll be fine. So obviously we got off air, and then I went hashtag Steph's Packed Lunch, which is the program we were on, and it was great. This guy had been tweeting so much abuse at me and mum, and just said about me, he just said, this guy, 100% virgin. Hashtag Steph's Packed Lunch.
Mate, you got to frame that.
Exactly. I know. I was so happy. So I was like, this guy's great. And it was great. I tweeted him back being like, how did you know? How could you tell? And he just tweeted back lol. And he just, I don't know. I now sort of love that guy. I might follow him just because he's like my first TV troll. Hopefully many more. And that is just, it was just really, really great. So yes, unfortunately, I have the face for radio, the voice for radio, and I'll probably be sticking to radio because I can't take the abuse on television.
Well, it was a stunning debut.
Thanks, mate.
But we should probably start talking about this, let's be honest, stinker of a film.
Oh, my word. This is, guys, back to Taking Hugh for Granted. This is our 50th proper episode. We've done little bonus ones here and there. You know, we've got the Hughes News episodes, things like that. But this is, I guess, film number 50. We've chucked in a few TV movies and things in there. But this is film number 50.
I can't believe you made it.
I know, it's crazy. And this might be the worst yet. But let's find out for sure. This film is called Night Train to Venice. And let's have a synopsis from Synopsis Simon.
Night Train to Venice, directed by Carlo U. Quinterio, written by Leo Tichat and Tony Hertreiter, and shown at the Cannes Film Festival in 1993 before a release to a wider audience from 1995. Scottish journalist Martin Gimmle, played by Hugh Grant, is travelling on the Orient Express night trip to Venice to drop off his copy of a book on European Neo-Nazism to an unknown publisher. On the journey, Gimmle meets a cast of characters, including a performer, played by Tahnee Welch, and her daughter, played by Rachel Rice, who seem to be the only ones who can help Gimmle when the mysterious otherworldly powers of the elusive stranger, played by Malcolm McDowell, start to take hold.
It's an interesting one, this film. It was shown in the Cannes Film Festival, I believe, in 1993, and then wasn't released to wider audiences until 1995. As you may have already alluded to, that could be because the film was just so shit and went down really bad at Cannes, but we're not sure. But I want to know what you thought of the immediate opening of this film.
Well, I mean, it threw me for a loop, really, because it's like a 5-year-old is in charge of the editing.
Yeah.
Because you're in a scene where Hugh Grant's walking around and then suddenly there's like a 2-second flash of like a Nazi or someone injecting themselves, or like a skinhead or some random guy naked in a bathroom. Rottweilers. It was really jarring.
Yeah, so jarring. Absolutely crazy. And we're going to release this around Halloween. It's kind of a lot of online what it's told me. It was kind of like a scary sort of film. And I was like, ooh. And it starts with these like tubular bells, which tubular bells, that's the song from The Exorcist, right? I think. Did you do that in music class? That was one of the first things we had to learn. Did you do that?
No.
I feel like
you learn how to play The Exorcist,
which is so weird, isn't it? It's so odd that they're like, do go for the tubular bells song. But anyway, but it starts something very similar to that, and it's like you say, it's these weird like 2-second shots of the dead tree. Then there's like little shots of a little girl playing. Then there's these black shoes walking down a cobbled street with this cane, and you just think to yourself, this is all the hallmarks and makings of a like scary horror film, and I don't know what the fuck's going on. But it makes sense from the beginning, but that doesn't stop, and it's just all over the place. It's absolutely mad. Are you a business owner? Are you running a political campaign? Are you a furniture outlet having yet another sale? If the answer to any of those questions isn't no, then you can have your advertisement right here. The Taking Hugh for Granted podcast gets over 100 listeners every single episode. For prices starting as low as 6 figures, you can have your advertisement right here. So what are you waiting for? Email takinghughforgranted@gmail.com today for a full price list, and you can have your advertisement right here. Oscar, Hugh Grant. Thoughts?
I actually liked him in the movie to some degree. Like, I think we will discuss how much we sort of dislike the film, probably, but I don't think that was because of Hugh's performance. I actually thought that Hugh did a decent job. He's got a monobrow, which is very sort of, I think that is that 90s monobrow look, isn't it? He has it in a couple of other films as well, but I don't know. I mean, it does look bad in 2021, but I think in 1993, obviously, it was a thing, wasn't it?
It certainly was, and the leading lady in this film seemed to like it. She seemed to be very taken by it, so that was it worked well for him there. But you're right, the monobrow, I noticed that as well, and it makes me think like, I wondered whether that was a stylistic choice at the time, or whether that was just he just didn't pluck.
Maybe he just had one.
He just had one. And I just wonder now whether Hugh Grant, do you reckon he has to keep his eyebrows in shape, do you reckon?
I don't know if do you keep your eyebrows in shape when you're like 60? I guess it gets out of control, doesn't it?
Exactly.
It starts growing out of your fucking,
everywhere.
Forehead.
Yeah, forehead, ears, nose, it's all over the shop. So what I'm thinking is, I wonder whether if he could grow a monobrow in 1993, he surely can grow a monobrow now, and surely that means he has to keep it pretty in shape.
He probably does, yeah.
Well, I often think about Hugh Grant, sort of like washing, getting dressing himself, things like that. And now I can add that, shaving his monobrow, to part of his repertoire. But the film starts and he's like on the phone to someone, and everything seemed normal for like the first 5 seconds. And then suddenly I was like, hang on a second. Has he got a Scottish accent again?
He's meant to be Scottish. So his name's Martin and he's a Scottish journalist.
Yeah.
Supposedly. I don't know whether he was meant to be doing a softer Scottish accent.
Yeah, definitely.
But I don't know about you, Diggs, but I think it faded throughout the film. Like, once again, we saw that kind of first 15 minutes of the film. He's kind of like, you're like, that is an accent, isn't it? And then you're like, no.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's weird. Like, I wonder, it definitely was softer. So the last film we watched, The Big Man / Crossing the Line, it was a much thicker Scottish accent, even though he only spoke like 2 lines in that film. It was definitely there. It was thicker. Whereas this, I don't know. It definitely was meant to be softer. But like you say, either I got used to the accent, or maybe it did drift slightly as the film went on, which wasn't great. But I have to say, like, I do feel like we should be hugging ourselves. We're so lucky to have back-to-back films where Hugh's doing a Scottish accent. And when he is doing it, it isn't bad. It's good.
It isn't bad. I mean, we posted on our Instagram a little clip of his Scottish accent sort of saying, yay or nay. And we had the seal of approval from a Scot. So that's all you need to know.
Oh, mate, that's huge. And now, how did you spell nay? Did you spell it N-A-E? You know how they're like, nay bother? And all that sort of stuff.
I just put the thumbs up, thumbs down, so I didn't bother spelling it.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's a very bad line. I can't hear you. Yeah, that's me. That's me. It's Martin Gimmle speaking.
And you'll be in Venice tomorrow?
That's right. I'm coming on the train tonight. I get the 3:05 and I arrive in the morning.
Fine, we'll be waiting for you.
Yeah, and then I've got the address. I've got it here. It's, right, Inferno Publishing, Industriale via Cimitoro. Yeah, va bene.
He was meant to be a Scottish journalist, but like, what else about his character did you know? Was there anything else that you could say about him?
You're right, Diggs. I mean, apart from the fact that he basically goes mental at the end of the film. I mean, we'll talk about the end, but basically there's this character on the train who seems to have control over people's dreams, and at one point Hugh is like kind of like in a he seemingly goes into like trances throughout the movie. How I would describe it is, when Harry Potter is dreaming and Voldemort comes into his head and he's like, and he's holding his scar. That is literally like what Hugh Grant has in this movie. It's really stupid.
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. Yeah, this guy, like, who's called in the script, I think he's called the Stranger. When he's like stalking around the the train, and every now and then, like you say, he's almost he is basically Voldemort. Whenever he looks at Hugh or makes eyes on him, and Hugh's like and goes into these weird trances. But the thing is, the trances are cut in such a way that like you don't actually know what's real and what isn't real after a while, which I guess there'll be a lot of nerdy kids at home going, well, that's the point. And I get that, but also it does mean that it is kind of difficult to follow after a while. It's just sort of like, well, I don't know where we're at or what the fuck is going on.
And there were a couple of moments with this guy, the stranger, and Hugh, their interactions, that really made me sort of sit up in my seat a little bit. I mean, there was one point where he goes something like, about the leading lady, he goes like, why don't you fuck her and have it done with it, or something like that. And I was like, where the hell did that come from?
This is the problem. There's so much stuff to unpack here, because I was just about to explain what they were after they met, but this is how they meet, right? Hugh Grant, we find out like 20 minutes in, Hugh Grant is a writer, but he's not, and he's interviewing people for this thing happening in Venice. Turns out that's all I feel like undercover, and he's actually writing a book on neo-Nazis. The neo-Nazis have infiltrated the train. Long story short, they find Hugh Grant, they cut his hand open. Hugh Grant then runs into the carriage where everyone's like having a drink and eating, and this girl's like, yo, what happened to your hand? And he's like, oh, nothing.
While his hand is like literally falling off. Yeah,
and it's like, sorry, so you're not going to tell the staff that are in this carriage, or the loads of innocent people that are in this carriage who could maybe help you, that there's a band of knife-wielding neo-Nazis who are like gallivanting around. So apparently that's fine. And she's like, oh, your hand is really badly cut. I have some things in my room that could help out with that. And it's like, oh, and then like they go off together, and the stranger is staring like, oh yeah, after them. Then they go into the room. She's fixing up his hand, and this is what I don't know how they start talking about what he wants for Christmas. I don't know how they do that.
Regarding Christmas, could you make sure I don't get any ties or pullovers or socks, because I can't stand them.
Well, what do you want?
Well, I quite like books, actually. I'm an intellectual.
And then they start kissing.
In all seriousness, though, I want to put it out there that the woman in this film might be the best looking girl out of all Hugh Grant's films.
Oh my word!
Like we've come a long way to the second. I think we might be on our second last film, and she might trump them all. Maybe. What do you think,
mate? I mean, she is absolutely stunning. She's absolutely stunning. So I do think that's probably, you could well be right.
I think the only person who would trump it would be Liz Hurley.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I think there are two films that this parallels a little bit, and Rowing in the Wind with Liz Hurley is one. You know, you got that kind of gothic horror thing going on, although I think that one was a lot better executed than this one.
Yeah.
It also reminded me of Bitter Moon to some degree.
Yes.
I don't know if you agree with that.
Absolutely.
For the main reason that, and this is quite a common thing, isn't it, in movies, where you get this kind of like entrapment. You're on a moving train, or you're in a plane, or you're on a boat, and you can't get out, and shit starts happening. Everyone starts killing each other. So there were similar vibes.
Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head. Like you say, in Bitter Moon, they're on a boat. It's really claustrophobic on there. In this one, they're on a train. Also, the stranger in this film, he's trying to get these two together, Hugh Grant and the girl together. In Bitter Moon, it's the weird guy in the wheelchair who's trying to get Hugh to get with his girlfriend. And again, the girl, like in both of these, the women who they cast, like you said before, like they're really beautiful. They are just complete, like, here's someone who's really fit. They're just complete object of like desire and probably almost lust and stuff. And we're very much going to play to that. It's just like, go on, Hugh, get it. And yeah, it's highly sexually charged, much like Bitter Moon. So is this one. Which makes me think, because eventually they do get off the train. And I'd like to ask you this, Oscar. Let's say you're the woman in this film, the lead. You're on a train with your kid and your mum. You meet Hugh Grant, and you're like, yeah, well, I'll get involved with him. And then the train stops, and you're like, I'll take him home as well. And your daughter's like, is that man coming home with us? And you're like, yes, he is. And your mum's like, Is that man coming home? And you're like, yes, Mum. Yes, he is. It's a bit weird.
It is a little bit weird. I mean, there's some bad spirits involved. And yeah, it was odd as well because, you know, we're obviously on the night train to Venice. I think they're going from Munich to Venice, and the first half of the film is based on the train. And then they're in Venice. And Venice is like this zombie land full of like characters looking like they're from the 12th century. And I mean, it was really, really jarring right at the beginning of the scene in Venice where I think Hugh Grant says something like, I just get the feeling there's some kind of menace in the air. And then it just like cuts to it cuts to the neo-Nazis on like a Venetian gondolier rowing in Venice. And it's just, it's hard to describe, but it was just really bad.
It's so bad. It's so bad. Again, and the neo-Nazis, like you say, then they're chasing him round Venice. And at one point, there's a car chase between Hugh Grant, which is absolutely pathetic. It's the worst thing I've ever seen, because also it's so clear that they basically had like one little courtyard they were allowed to film in. So basically they try and cut it so that it looks like they're driving down different streets, but you can realise is quite quickly, oh no, they're just driving up and down the same street, which is embarrassing. So it looks like they're just like driving and chasing each other in circles. But it's like, why are these neo-Nazis chasing him around Venice when they had him literally on a train where he couldn't escape, and they were like in his room and stuff? Like it just made
like cutting him and like
it just made no sense. But this car chase ends with Hugh hurtling off his motorbike. The motorbike he's stolen violently. He's got blood in his face. He wakes up in hospital. He can't remember who he is or who the leading lady is. And this is what really confused me as well. It then says 1 year later. So he's in hospital. He can't remember anything. We've now gone a year beyond. He's still living with the leading lady. And he's asking himself in a voiceover, he's like,
Who am I? Who the fuck am I?
She comes in and goes, stop tormenting yourself, because he's looking in the mirror being like, who am I? And then they have sex. And then afterwards he's like,
I don't feel anything. I don't know who you are. I'm sorry, I don't... Fuck.
And then he's looking through his passport being like, who am I? Who am I? You just think this must have been going on for a whole year.
I wasn't convinced enough that Hugh made that much of an impression on this woman and her kid.
No.
For her to stick with him. You know,
yeah, that's what I mean. They said that they told each other they loved each other on the train, and they literally met that evening or maybe that next day. Like this, it's just mental. Like none of this you're like, oh yeah, I buy that. It just feels it feels mad.
Well, you're listening to Hugh Grant, taking Hugh for granted on the radio. Hugh Grant, taking Hugh for granted. Oh, the podcast show.
What did you think of the last shot and the ending?
I thought it was absolutely pathetic, to be quite honest. Are you referring to the line that was put on the film?
Well, this is the thing. So Hugh Grant is like, he's run away because he still can't remember who he is. He's having a cup of tea. The girl's daughter, he sees her up on a ledge and she's going to fall off. He runs up to her. She falls off. He catches her, and then they're all hugging. And it goes.
Yeah, it's like some euphoric music.
Yeah, it goes to that at the end of an 80s TV show where it's like a freeze frame, like, well, hey, we did it. And it's so weird. It goes all slow mo. It's like da 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 da. And they're all kissing and hugging as a three. And it's like it's just so weird and out of place. But it's like, do you think that was meant to be like he got his memory back?
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but there wasn't any suggestion that he got it back literally the moment that happened. He was still a deranged loser who should be sectioned when he catches the girl. So, I mean, what I was referring to was at the very end, they put on in text on screen, imagine you woke up one day and realized it was all a dream. And to be quite honest with you, mate, when you're in English class in year 5, and you're told, go and write a creative story, the one thing the teachers say to you is, do not write a story where you wake up in the end and it's all a dream. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what they've done.
That's exactly what they've done. But I just don't understand which bit of that was a dream. Was the whole thing a dream?
It can't have been all a dream.
Well, that's what I mean. But then it's like, well, which bit was a dream? So did he not actually save that daughter and she's actually just plummeted to her death?
I don't know, because there were some weird bits as well where like the same scene got repeated.
Yeah,
I don't know if you
exactly.
noticed that. I was
Yeah.
like tripping out a little bit. And then I read this review a bit lower down on IMDb, which I think sums up quite well, where someone said, after suffering through watching this film, all I could think of was that the writer and the director must have been doing vastly different types of drugs, resulting in incomprehensible train wreck, pun intended, of a film, which I thought was brilliant, really.
That is
'cause
good.
It was suddenly like, you know, am I having like a memory relapse?
Yeah.
Were
Yeah.
these guys on acid and like they just got into some crazy trip
Yeah.
where they were just like, we should do that scene again.
Yeah. But also, that would kind of make sense. And then I think, like you say, someone else, though, who had creative control was like, they were on a different drug entirely, like speed or cocaine, where they were like, let's just have loads of crazy shit at the beginning. There's fucking neo-Nazis. There's a fucking scary man called the Stranger. There's this fucking really fit woman on the train. Hugh Grant's going to have sex with her. He's going to cut his hand. It's going to be mental. And like that first 30 minutes on the train was like, whoa, because there was just so much stuff going on. It was absolutely crazy.
It was crazy. I mean, I want to ask you, Diggs, maybe, are there any good films set on trains? Because, you know, I haven't watched a lot of all these films, but the most recent one I saw, which I think was the remake of The Murder on the Orient Express, whatever it's called, with Kenneth Branagh, was awful.
Yeah.
It was just like beyond bad. And it had like the star cast with all these amazing actors. And it was a bit like this, to be honest, where like, you know, everyone's like dressed up and they're, you know, drinking drinks and they say kind of like things that are meant to be, I don't know, interesting or whatever, but they're just terrible. I mean, the only good train scene I can think of, and I was watching this going back to James Bond, the first time he meets Vesper on the train in Casino Royale. It's a brilliant scene.
It's a lovely scene.
But that's
great.
what we want. We want a 5-minute thing. We don't want the whole film set on a bloody train.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's some Polar Express fans who are absolutely fuming right now. I've never seen the Polar Express.
Neither have I.
It was literally on my VHS. You know, back in the days when you used to have films on VHS, and before the film started, they'd have adverts for other things you could buy. I remember seeing the advert for the Polar Express over and over again, being like, I should really watch that. It looks class. Never have. But also, I was thinking, there's a great film by Northwest that's had some films on trains on it. But like, yeah, I think also a film called Source Code. I'd recommend checking that out. That has a lot of scenes that repeat themselves. But essentially, trains suck.
They do. I mean, I guess Train Spotting, but that's not on a train, so that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. That gets it. Yeah, and Thomas the Tank Engine, the film with
great film, mate. It's my favourite.
Alec Baldwin.
Oh yeah,
Did you see that
random.
one? So random. I remember I got that from my I must have been like 5 or something. I got it for my birthday. Just ran upstairs, put it straight in the TV, just watched it over and over again. Couldn't believe it.
Classmate. It's so weird when you go and watch those episodes on YouTube.
Yeah.
Where when you were a kid, you thought they were like half an hour long, and then they're like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's great. It's mad. It's mad. I feel so bad for the adults who must have been like, they'll be like, oh, how do you keep your kids entertained? Because if each episode's only 5 minutes, there's not enough of them to keep the kids entertained.
I mean, these days you just hand them an iPad, go on YouTube, type in The Night Train from Venice, and your kid's having nightmares for the next year.
Taking Hugh for granted. Taking Hugh for granted. Taking Hugh for granted. What did you think, lads? Were they taking Hugh for granted?
So, Diggs, that time in the episode, we got to ask, I think I know the answer.
Yeah.
Is this film taking Hugh for granted?
This film is taking you for granted. It is shit. I just wanted to be really
Blunt.
assertive and right, because we can't mess around here. It's so shit. So I'm just going to ask you off the bat, and same for you.
Oh, 100%. I think the discussion we should be having is it the worst film that Hugh Grant's ever been in?
I've just written that down.
Because you know that Hugh Grant said it was the worst film he's ever been in.
Yeah, in 2002, I believe, on a radio interview. But I wish I could find that, because I want to hear him say it.
And I wish I could ask him that question again, because he's done some quite bad ones since then.
yeah, exactly, yeah. But so what do you think? Where does it rank for you down there? Is it the worst?
It might not be the worst purely on an entertainment value.
Agreed. That's exactly what I was thinking.
You know, there's some really bad ones, but I was sort of still engaged in this film. Viewers, I will admit that I was watching this in 1.25 speed, which made it feel even worse.
Yeah.
It was even, at one point it was in 1.5 and I was like, I can't do this. It's like too trippy right now.
No, mate, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I remember the first like half an hour, 40 minutes. I was like, do you know what? This film, it's mental and shit, but like, it has enough intrigue for me to keep me engaged. And then by about 45 minutes, 50 minutes, I went, oh God, oh no, okay, 1.5 speed. It has to be done. I can't be sitting through this rubbish because it is just shite and boring. I think the worst film still for me remains The Bengali Night. That is the worst film he's ever done because that is shit and boring. There's no 40 minutes where I was like, oh, I am kind of entertained. It is just boring. This film is just one step above that, and I think just above the two of them is probably American Dreams.
I'm gonna put one in there and say that An Awfully Shite Adventure might be worse than this film.
Oh Jesus, that sucked. That really sucked.
But you know what, Diggs? I don't think it really matters because we are getting so close now to sadly, to watching all of Hugh Grant's films, and we are going to write up. Yeah. We are going to do it, write up our 1 to 50. Yeah, whatever it is.
Oh my God.
And then we're going to pitch it to every media outlet in the land.
Yeah.
And it's going to be on the internet forever, and everyone's going to be able to see this masterpiece.
Yeah, which is the true definitive list of the... Oh my God, this is huge. We need to do a whole episode on that. We need to do like a long episode. Wow. That might have to be like we might have to do a series where we do like, right, here's the 50 to
50 to 40. Yeah. Well, look, we've just got more content. The podcast that never dies. You might want it to end, but it's never going to end.
We're not fucking leaving. Oh my God. Oh, well, you'll know in a few weeks where we fall on the worst film, Hugh Grant film. But I guess until then, people, thank you so much for listening. We are so close now to the end of his films. We may do some of his TV shows, but the initial thing was we wanted to watch all of his films, his full-length feature films, and we are, I believe, one film away, which is mental.
It's been almost a 2-year journey because our first episode was released on, I think it was the 14th of December 2019. Wow. And what are we now? We're like October the 19th. Yeah. 2021.
Wow.
So thanks for being here with us, everyone. And we're looking forward to hitting that last film.
Yeah, it's mad. It's actually mad. Wow. I wonder if I'm going to cry next episode. I might cry.
Yes. I want to Diggs cry on the episode.
It won't be the first time in the podcast either.
No.
So those of you who are newbies, go check out our back catalogue and try and find that bad one.
Yeah.
But guys, thank you so much for listening. As always, follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. Just type in Taking Hugh for Granted. You'll find us there. Oscar, thank you so much as ever.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Taking Hugh for Granted is produced, edited and presented by Diggory Waite and Oscar Beardmore Gray. The producers of Taking Hugh for Granted would like to state that this podcast is in no way associated with the actor Hugh John Mungo Grant, nor does it endorse his views or represent him in any way. Instead, by creating this podcast, Oscar and Diggory hope to celebrate Hugh's illustrious career, reliving his old classics and shedding light on some of his hidden gems. Hugh, if you're listening, we hope you approve.